The Mad Titan gets ready for Endgame. Here's your look at the new Hasbro Marvel Avengers Endgame Thanos. The evil Thanos wields the power of the Infinity Stones to bend the universe to his will. So, just how tall is Thanos? Let's take the tape measure and find out. To the very top of his head, the basic figure of Thanos stands 6.2 inches in height. Now, in centimeters, I know somebody's going to be asking about centimeters. Centimeters, you're looking at the figure standing 15.7, a little over 15 and a half. Somebody also asks, what about size comparisons? What about size comparisons? So we'll bring in the Hulk. Hulk is a little bit bigger than Thanos, about the same height roughly in the film. Here we have Thor, a little bit smaller than Thanos. Here we have War Machine. War Machine. I just left the cannon off here. Let's just put that back in place. There is War Machine. And somewhere along the lines, I should have Rocket Raccoon. I don't know where I put Rocket Raccoon, but here's roughly about where we're standing right now on the figure line. Haven't really had a look at many of these just yet, but of course, rest assured, we're going to be having a look at some more Endgame figures in upcoming videos. Don't know really where Rocket scurried off to, but nonetheless, accessory-wise, you're looking at that double-bladed sword that Thanos wields. Sword is pretty intricately detailed and carved in plastic, I have to admit. You can see the little smaller squares and rectangles making up a kind of circuitry-looking bladed weapon. The blade even has these little chips and little notches in it. Little small touches like that I really appreciate. Now, you can only really put it in his one hand. As you can probably guess it, he is wielding the Infinity Gauntlet in the other. And for the most part, the blade fits relatively well. A little bit of reluctancy when I say that, because it doesn't sit very tight. I mean, it sits a little on the loose side, but I guess for what it needs to do, I mean, it's not going to fall out of his hand, so I can't cry foul in that instance, but it just does sit a little on the loose side. We'll go ahead and take that out of his hand. I guess technically you could say his other accessory is the Infinity Gauntlet, but that is not something that can be removed, at least from this figure. That's what the Infinity Gauntlet looks like on Thanos' arm. It's very nicely, again, well sculpted. I feel like really the ongoing trend with this particular figure and really all the other figures is they don't have a whole lot of paint to them. The armor really does look good on Thanos, but I feel like it's a little on the light side. Probably just an extra little pop of additional gold color probably could have, maybe even if they slightly had darkened this a little bit, because I feel like it's a little too light versus how it looks in the film. The head sculpt. Yes, the head sculpt. This is one of which a topic of much needed conversations. Some would say it's a little bit too smiley of a Thanos. I could possibly agree with that notion. The head sculpt is actually quite good, but I do think that the smile, if you want to call this a smile, is a little detracting from the figure. From certain angles, it doesn't look like he's smiling as much. From first glancing at it from the front, and most definitely when you do pick this up in the card, when you get this in stores, it's very apparent that he's smiling, and I find it does ruin a little bit of the figure. I kind of wish he would have had just more of a straighter expression, more not the smiling variety, but instead more of a somber warrior expression, something just a regular lined mouth. That little bit of curve, I think does ruin the figure a little bit. That's the big hiccup for this particular release. As I said, really, the rest of the detailing on this guy is quite good for a basic class figure. You're limited, of course, with being at basic class to some of the limitations that, of course, posability will not be afforded for this particular release of Thanos. If you wanted a more articulated Thanos, of course, there is the Build-A-Figure Thanos wave from Marvel Legends. Maybe we'll get around to have a look at that at some point as well. Very intricate looking armor, to, again, the credit of Hasbro. This is sort of the more bargain line or the kid line oriented figures. So really this is good for the kids that are looking to pick up a figure of Thanos. Maybe they don't necessarily want to be building a Thanos from multiple figures and released in a wave. This is kind of the great entryway if you want to just get Thanos on his own. With that, again, like I said, he does have some limitations to posability. We'll talk about that in a second. One of the big problems also with this particular figure as well is that he sort of has a front step pose to him. What do I mean by that? But one thing you'll notice is that he does have bent knees. Very obvious that he has bent knees. This one more specifically than this one right here. He has sort of the same problem that I had with Thor. Reaching off to the camera once again, off to the black hole. There's Thor once again. You remember Thor also had the same thing. Although it seemed obvious, kind of not quite ironic, but interesting, the fact that his bent leg is the opposite leg to that of Thanos. But he does have a bent leg, which causes, in order for the figure to stand properly, you kind of have to have this leg brought forward. Sort of not quite museum posing, but kind of in the way that one leg is ahead of the other. Thanos, you have to do the exact same thing. It's actually the opposite because, again, it's on this leg, then, well, yeah, on this leg here. But unfortunately, you have to have the legs kind of off-stepped from one another. If you bring them closer together, then it does throw the balancing off on the figure, and he often does then lean on an angle. The only way to rectify this problem, if this is a problem for you, is that you have to bring the leg further forward on this leg, further back on this leg, and then Thanos stands perfectly fine. I would question how tall this figure actually could have been if they had just removed the bend in the knee altogether. I don't really personally see why they had to put a bend in the knee. The only logical solution I can come up with is for Hasbro then to eliminate posability. Just snap it out of existence. I guess what they wanted to do was, if they at least give a hinge in the knee or a bend in the sculpt of the knee, it kind of distorts the figure to think that there's posability to it when there actually isn't. If you have the figure completely straight on the straight leg and you can't do any posability to it, then it looks a little bit more like a brick, something that you just can't move at all. Even though you can't move the figure's legs other than just in the top of the thigh socket, bending the knee kind of gives you a slight distorted look at it, thinking again the figure has more posability when it really doesn't actually have that at all. So let's have a look at this guy's posability. As certainly I've already discussed that in nauseam amounts, I'm sure. His head rotates all the way around. It hinges up and down, and it angles back and forth. I'm still really not liking the smile on his face, I have to admit. Up and down, like I said, left and right, and in theory you can rotate it all the way around as well. The camera just did not like that for that one split second. The arms hinge out to about there. That's as far out as they go. You can move them forward, back, and all the way around. There's a swivel in the bicep, also hinge back and forth on the hand, in the arm, I should say. And it does not have any hand articulation, nor on here does he have any hand articulation. It's only articulated in the elbow areas. Does that make sense? Right there. There we go. Back and forth. Does not have a waist swivel, does not have an ab crunch, and then his legs go forward and his legs go back to about there. You really wouldn't be able to pose the figure necessarily by doing what I'm just doing right now. Even though he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, there really is no way that you can pose the figure like this. I guess if you put him on one stand, you could have him up like this. This kind of looks ridiculous. He's kind of doing like a back kick. But I do want to show you guys that that's the range of motion that he has. Thank goodness he's got these skirt pieces that are softer plastic. This allows, at the very least, even though he is limited on his own posability, at the very least you can still move the legs back and forth, so that is something. Overall, it's not a bad figure. Like I said, for what it is, you kind of have to go into it with a certain level of expectation. I don't expect these basic class figures to have much to them. To their credit, they are fairly detailed, Thanos being actually the better of the lot. He really has some intricate details to his armor and to, of course, his head. Just kind of wish that he didn't have the big smile from ear to ear. Despite, I'm sure, the opinions of the mob, I actually rather like reviewing these basic class figures. It gives me an opportunity to showcase to maybe the younger viewers out there some of the things that they could pick up in toy stores if they're looking to get a Thanos for themselves. Now, Hasbro, of course, diligent in the fact that they wanted to fully cover the Avengers Endgame line, gave you a couple of options that you could pick up the Mad Titan for yourself. The basic figure that we're looking at right now, or a much more invested, financially and time-wise, more invested purchase in which you would have to purchase the multiple Marvel Legends figures to build the very same Thanos. That Thanos, of course, will be a little bit taller, a little bit more detailed, and a whole lot more posable than the one that we're looking at right here. But again, there's a charm to be said for this particular figure. It's not perfect. I certainly greatly notice the fact that it's not perfect. It does have limitations, most definitely in the legs. And again, I get the fact that they bent the knee to kind of give you the sense that there is movement in the legs when really there is very little movement to be had. The head sculpt is good, even though I don't care for the smile. And overall, he's a pretty detailed figure for its price. So, again, the reasoning why I like to review these ones is to give people different interpretations, a different glance at some of these figures. There's charm to be found in even like the basic of class figures. Even though they don't have a whole lot of posability, I still think they're decent enough figures, again, if you are a little bit tighter on a budget and you still want to get a Thanos for your collection. Now, if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, you should be able to find it now at your local retail stores and toy stores, if you can find a toy store in your area. Today, we were having a look at the Hasbro Avengers Endgame. This was the Mad Titan Thanos, with a really awkward smile on his face, something of which I wish they could have changed and taken out completely. If you guys want to go back and have a look at some of my other Avengers Infinity War reviews, I haven't done a whole lot yet, but rest assured, take my word, there is going to be upcoming Avengers Endgame reviews coming onto this channel. So if that's your fancy and you want to fancy some more Avengers Endgame, stay tuned to this channel. Make sure as well you hit that little subscribe button down below and stay tuned because more Avengers stuff is going to be coming soon. So, promsies. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. If you've managed to pick up this figure for yourself, or really just based on this review and this review alone, let me know what you think down below of the basic Thanos. I know, again, the big hiccup is the fact he's limited on posability on the lower half, but overall, what do you think of this figure? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.